Waited 100.
I have the one and only 24 karat gold Labubu.
So one of the first things I want to point out here is that the Lamberts used an adoption consultant, and adoption consultants are highly unregulated. And not only that, but in 2024, the FTC sent letters to 31 adoption intermediaries or consultants, warning them to cease their unethical and illegal adoption practices. And actually, these practices included misrepresentation of licensing, inflated placement and wait time statistics, inaccurately portrayed costs, and much more. And many of these consultants were facing pretty steep fines if they continued. And so many of them immediately closed shop because the risk was now much worse than the reward. So knowing this, we're in 2025 with so much information available at the tips of our fingers, seems a little odd. This is just one of many examples of how private infant adoptions like Bella Lambert's are not putting the child's needs and trauma-informed, child-centered practices first. They are putting their own desires first. And when becoming a parent, particularly a parent through adoption, it's important that you do it in the most ethical way. And now, another thing that we saw in the video is that the Lamberts got to go to an ultrasound of the baby.
We're going to an ultrasound and we're gonna find out the gender of this next baby.
Wow, it's crazy.
Place your bet, Bella, boy or girl for you.
One thing I want you guys to think about is how pre-adoption placement puts considerable pressure on the biological mother. And this starts with these tiny, minute ways that parents and adoption consultants and agencies frame adoption that put pressure on this person in crisis. Now, there are some parents that do choose adoption fully knowing that they do not want to parent, and that is their right. As a woman who believes in pro-choice, I believe any parent should get to decide if they would like to continue a pregnancy, whether they would like to parent that child that resulted in that pregnancy, or place that child for adoption. And even though with every adoption there is a loss of first families, that may very well be the right choice for that specific situation. But the vast majority of private infant adoptions in the United States aren't that simple, happy story. There is so much that goes behind the scenes, from ads with geofencing that target women and pregnant people in crisis in certain areas looking for resources like SNAP and housing, and young pregnant teens that specifically target them to urge them to seek out crisis pregnancy centers to explore their options, where those options are very limited and adoption is highly encouraged. And then there's situations where these pregnant people are finally getting some type of help and they are being coerced. They're being told, hey, we'll cover gas, we'll help you with repairs to your cars, we'll help you get housing. And then if they say, hey, I'm not very sure about this decision, I don't know if I can go through with it, then the agency or the consultant will say, well, that's unfortunate. How are you going to pay all this back? And that's what it comes down to. the money. This for-profit business model needs people in crisis to feed their industry, to keep it going, to keep it flourishing. And it's really no coincidence that resources like SNAP and WIC and housing are becoming more difficult to obtain. Our government doesn't care about families in crisis, doesn't care that parents can be working 2 jobs and still not afford basic needs because the minimum wage hasn't gone up in however long. They don't care that rent prices are extraordinary. But all of these things, all these difficulties, they help promote a path to achieving what they want, which is white, wealthy parents raising children and assimilating them into their families. And this often starts with tiny little ways that adoptive parents and agencies are framing adoption that minimize the impact for the biological family. And one of the ways that they do that is by using terms as birth mother instead of expectant parent or simply mother or parent. And in this tiny little practice of choosing this specific language, it's a form of coercion that puts pressure on the expectant parent and rewrites the narrative here that portrays this as a done deal already before the child has even been born. Now, we don't know the exact timeline. We just see what they curated for us to enjoy in another viral adoption video that followed their adoption scam videos and previous adoption of their first child. And so we don't know exactly when these things were filmed, but we do know that they informed their eldest child about the new baby and brought her a stuffed animal that the mother helped pick out.
Special thing ever, and I'm going to cherish this forever. We were able to get the baby's heartbeat recorded for story, and listen.
Also, what's so special too is the birth mom picked this out.
Yeah.
Which
she picked the lion out for.
I just want to reiterate that these little instances that are put into these videos are carefully curated. Bella and Dallin wanted you to know that the birth mother helped do this, that the birth mother is encouraging these things before she is even a birth mother. She didn't place her child. She still has time to decide. The reality is that this isn't a done deal, but they are framing it as a done deal. They are telling their daughter, a child, to expect a baby because that's what they see this as. They don't see this as a situation that may not go in their favor and turn out to be what is often referred to as a failed adoption. Now, I could go on and talk about this for days, but I have to run and pick up my kids soon. So I just want to leave off with this for now. This narrative in adoption continues to be portrayed in this specific way because it helps promote and support hopeful families and adoption agencies to get what they want. When the reality is that most birth mothers would choose to parent if they simply had the resources to do so. And oftentimes that's a few $1,000s because they are choosing this option because there are no other alternatives. to this often temporary crisis. And many of these parents will go on to get stable jobs, stable housing, be in a stable, healthy relationship, go on to raise more children, and realize that the choice that they made wasn't really a choice. But as we know, the dominant narrative of adoption in America is a positive one. That adoption is a happily ever after, that orphans like me are saved by upper middle class suburban families that swoop in to give a child a better life. And by all intents and purposes, I did get that better life. Many adopted children got that better life where we were afforded these material things and Disney trips and food on the table every night. You know, necessities that every child deserves, but with a cost. And that cost is that we lost our first families, our families of origin, when in reality it is devastating. It is devastating for the birth parent. It is devastating for their extended family. And most importantly, it is devastating for the child. In this one moment that you are receiving joy, a child is being separated from their family of origin. And while adoption has been depicted as a happily ever after, I encourage you to consider how corrupt this industry is and how this beautiful, happy journey for one family is a traumatic one, full of loss for another. In the United States, the adoption industry is a multi-billion-dollar business that has obviously been very successful. But in the recent years, there has been a decrease in the number of infants and newborns available, which has made the competition for babies a lot more fierce. And because of this, because the demand for children is so high by hopeful adopted parents, and the number of adoption agencies take advantage and charge exorbitant amounts. Now, I know people will say, oh, well, you know, it can't be free. Like adoption fees, you got to pay all these people. There are ways. There are other countries that do adoption not for profit. According to sociologist Gretchen Sisson, the adoption industry in the United States is based on one inconvenient truth. For every family that is formed by adoption, you have a family that is separated by adoption.